Hi, and welcome back for this second part of the Excel tables session that was organized on the 7th of August by the Microsoft Excel Kampala group. A collaboration between David Gerard from Master Management Consulting and Marvin Sekandi from Vinix Software School. In this session, so we looked at Excel tables. What are tables? What are more specifically tables inside Excel? How to create an Excel table, and how to play around with the different properties of that table in terms of design and formatting and giving a proper name to a table, eventually resizing the table, restricting the type of information that we want to have in our table, and improving the accuracy of our data overall, and better structuring our data. Okay, so Excel table organized by the Microsoft Excel Kampala group in Uganda. Okay, so we saw what is a table, how to create a table in Excel. Well, we had an overview of managing table settings and properties in the ribbon. You remember that when you create a table in Excel, in the ribbon we have an additional tab that appears in the ribbon that gives extra properties, okay, to our table, like the name of our table, but also we can resize our table. We can add a table totals row and format the different columns and rows differently with the design section. And we also restricted the type of information that we had in our table and ensured that we had only one type of data. Now what we are going to look at is mainly referencing a table in formulas. How does that work? And summarizing a table as well. So using pivot table and separating the storage of our data, keeping it in our table, and outside of that we use a pivot table or eventually formulas in which we reference our table depending on what we want to obtain. Okay, so we view, okay, what about this? So if you want to if you missed it, well, you can always go back to the previous video and have an introduction with who we are and what we do. We started with something like that, okay, that data that were stored in different small tables and all separate from each other. And the goal was to obtain one main table. Okay, apparently my Sway has a problem. It doesn't display the image, but we have it here. Okay, at the end, we wanted to have one table that contained all our data from all the years and all the different categories, and each column properly formatted. Okay, so we obtain this result. That's where we are. And we noticed as well that there are some slight differences in between what we have in Excel desktop and Excel online, the way we can create a table. And well, currently we have now access to the properties. I think that was not the case some time ago, I think so. So Excel Online constantly improves, so we get new feature regularly and it gets just better and better. So back to Excel desktop and mainly our table. Now we want to use the data that we have stored inside. Currently we have 2015 and 2016. I haven't yet included 2017 because I want to show you also how it works when we have created already some formulas, a small report with eventually a pivot table and other formulas, okay, or summaries that we are going to create. And we include new data. So, new data arrived, as it is usually the case in all businesses, and you want to integrate them in your table, but you want to minimize also the effort of recreating that report and avoid as much as possible repetitive tasks, and ensure proper quality of your report. Okay, so let's see how much we have sold in total. So the total amount of sales that we have. So we can write it here. Okay, total sales. Total sales. We go in the cell K3 and we are going to start typing our formula inside. So all formulas in Excel start with the equal sign, and in that case we want to sum the sales of our table. So we can start typing sum. We are going to use the function sum, and we can sum here the sales. So automatically Excel is going to reference the table with the table name. So remember, we gave it the sales data TBL for table of the sales data. And we are calling in particular from that table the sales column. And we can close the bracket for our function. That's it. Simple function, the sum of all the sales within our sales data table. And what's really powerful with table, among other things, many other things, is that referencing the table name and the column name makes the formula much easier to read and understand than F2 to F51. It would be a bit more complicated to understand what are we trying to calculate and what is this figure that we have obtained. So in that case, if someone read, okay, sales data table from sales, it makes sense. It's way much better and simpler to understand. Let's validate with enter, and we obtain the total amount for the sales. Okay. Now we want to have the rating as well. So it wouldn't make sense, okay, to sum all the ratings together, but what we can do is the average rating. So we can write here average rating, and we can calculate, okay, equal. We are going to call the average function, which is this one, average. So we have many different average A, average ifs, and the average as well. Well, in that case, we are going to keep it simple and use average, and we want the average of the rating. So here again, we can select, we come at the border of the column G and the top of the column rating from our table, and we can see that our cursor changes. We ensure that we select only the data within our column without the header, and we can close our bracket and enter. And we need to format it in percentage, and now we have an average of 50% for our rating. It might be useful also to have some statistics about data. So what's the minimum rating maybe, and what's the maximum rating? So we can do min rating, and we call the function, so always equal min, and we select our rating column from our sales data table and close the bracket. Okay, so we change the number format to percentage, and now we have the minimum rating that was given to 5, and we can calculate also the max rating in our table. So it's going to be equal max, And this time we are going to do differently. Instead of selecting our column, we can write it as well. So sales, we are going to call the sales table. We can validate with the tab key to accept the suggested entry by Excel. We open the square bracket, and when we open the square bracket, we have the list of all the different components of our table, which are mainly the fields that are available in our table, the year, fields or columns, those are synonyms. The year column, category column, product, sales, rating, but we have also some additional components of our table, like all, so it would be the entire data range without the headers, all. Let's close. Oops. Close. Actually, it selects also the header. I wanted to confirm that. Okay, so all is everything, the entire table with the headers included. Okay, so we have also data. So data is different actually. There's the data range without the headers. Then we have access to the headers. So we could select the headers. And eventually the totals row if we had activated the totals row. We will see that in a minute as well. So, and actually it can be a little bit dangerous, okay, to refer the totals row, because when there are some filters applied on the table, the totals row reflect the filtered result, the filtered value of what is shown in the data. So that's a bit specific. We need to be well aware about that. So let's select our rating and close the square bracket and close our bracket here for the function. Let's enter. And now we know that the max rating is 99%, the minimum is 5%, and the average rating is 50%. So we also applied the percentage format. We can do the same also for sales. So we are going to organize our summary a bit different. We are going to put that on the side. So here we have actually ratings. Okay, so average, min, and max. Okay, all right, let's format that yeah, like this. Okay, so here we're gonna have sales, total, min, and max as well, and we can include as well average here. It can bring some meaning as well. So this is our total. We can click and drag it in front of total. We are going to write average. Let's format this one as well in neutral here. And let's resize this. Okay, let's bit. Okay. We can resize as well. Okay, so average again equal average. Okay, we can okay, let's go back. Whoops. So once we start typing, Excel proposes us all the different functions that start with the letter that we have start typing. So if I start average, we have access to all the functions that contain average in it. Once I am satisfied with the highlighted value in the selection, then we can use the tab key to go a bit faster and have our function already fully typed. And then we have a clue of the different arguments that we need to put in that function to work. So all those functions are pretty simple. Average, minimum, maximum, at least the minimum argument that you need to put in is one argument, and usually it's a range or a collection of cells that you can put inside. So I mean, for our example, it's pretty straightforward. We call always the sales table. Note that when we call the sales table, we have an icon that gives us also a visual clue of what type of named range we are referring. In that case, it's a table, and also our name convention remind us that we are selecting the sales data table. So let's validate with the tab key again. Open the square bracket. We reference the sales. Again, we just type the first few letters and use tab key to go faster. Close the square bracket and close the function bracket. Here we go with our average. Let's go the same with the minimum function. Sales tab square, sales tab square, round bracket close, max. We can do the same. All right, always start with the equal sign. Okay, we have the sales tab, open the square bracket, S tab, close, and close the other bracket as well. Okay, what are we going to do to apply the formatting to the other cells? We can click inside here and we do format painter. We are going to select the format painter and apply the same format to all the other one. And that's a quick way of having our formatting applied to the remaining cells. All right, very good. So we know what's the minimum amount for the sales, what's the maximum amount, the average, and the total amount that we have for our data set here. That's quite some useful information already. Now we could create, so just here, a pivot table that will give us a bit more information about the content of our table. But before that, I have mentioned before tables row, rows total, sorry, or totals row, total row. Okay, here it goes. So let's see how that works. Okay, maybe sometimes you want to have the total amount just displayed below your table, you know? And surely something important, because I've seen it many times, you really want to avoid going below the 2015 year, then inserting a row here, you know, insert table rows above, and then you start typing total. This is not good. You want to avoid that. You surely don't want. And okay, the good thing is that because we have applied data validation with some restriction to a specific data type, if we start typing total, it wouldn't even work. So that's very good. It prevents the user to insert undesirable character or to destroy the structure of your table and the way that you have organized your data. If you want the tables row, the total row, sorry, then that's the function, the feature that we are going to use from the table style options of the table design. So let's cancel that and remove. We can select delete table rows. So a table row is different from delete entire row. It's different. So if I have some data here, okay, let's escape that. Let's say I have some data here and I delete the table row. It won't delete our data here. It will preserve our data. So that's very useful. Delete table rows. My data remains here. It's not deleted. Whereas if I delete the entire row, it will delete that obviously and all our content inside here, which we don't want. Okay. So now you still want to view a little bit. Okay, what did you sell in 2015? Well, you could create a formula that gives you that information, but you could also use filters, total row, and some functionality within that table itself. So different ways of displaying the total row at the bottom of your table. You could either go to the table design tab and then within the group table style option, click here. And automatically, so Excel inserts a total row at the bottom of your table. The second way of doing that is within your Excel table. You can right click anywhere in your table, go into the table option of your contextual menu and choose totals row. Okay, so we can use that totals row. And automatically Excel display the word total. You realize that here you have the option to write text inside because it's different from the data range of your table. So in that case, we have the header of the table. Here we have the data range of our table, and here it's the totals row or total row with S or no S, however you want. Okay, and remember when we call the function, so if I go back here and start typing equal and the name of our table, validating, open the square bracket, we have access to all the table itself, the data, so from the row 2 until the row 51, none including the headers and none including the total row. But we can also access the headers, so the first row in our table, and the totals row here. Okay, so the totals row, this one, we can access it as well. Okay, so it's separate from the rest of our table. Now, with that, we have the possibility also to select different type of information. You can see that when you click in each cell of the total row, you have a drop down that appears and give you the possibility to select a different type of operation that you want to apply to your totals row. Okay, so here in that case, automatically Excel proposes or suggests at least a sum, a classic sum, but again, it's not really the appropriate for the rating, so we need to select average, and here we are going to select the sum. Notice that the function that's inside, it's not a classic sum as we typed it, but it's a subtotal function which works a bit differently. The 109 is corresponding to the sum function, and the type of subtotal that's being applied to that column is a sum, as mentioned by this code, which is 109, and then it is applied to the sales column. So the name of the column or the range reference to which the subtotal should be applied, and then the type of subtotal, the function number. Okay, so 109 for sum, and here we have the average, and the average is 101 for the average calculation. Okay, so we have that information. So yeah, we have the subtotal, and it works differently from the sum. So let's sum, let's write it here, sum from total row, and we enlarge this until here. We type here equal, and we are going to write sales data table, open the square bracket, we call totals. So okay, double square, we go at the end, we close the first square bracket, place a comma, we open the second square bracket, and we call the sales. So we want with that function, we want to reference the totals row. Yeah, maybe we see it better from here. So we want to reference the totals row, that's what we are saying, And from the totals row, we want in particular the sales part of the totals row. So that's that section here. Okay. So now we are going to see that it's not always the same as this. Okay, it's different. So now if I apply a filter here, and I want to filter by the year, and we are going to select only the year 2015, and we want to see quickly, okay, what was the average in 2015 and what was the total sales for that year. We click OK. Okay, so that's a new feature in Excel that gives the possibility to have different views for your table when you collaborate with others. So in that case, it doesn't matter so much. Okay. So now we have the total here, which is corresponding to the sales of 2015, and the average in that year was 46%. And we can see that the sum from the totals row is well different from the total sales for the entire data of our table. The sum function referencing the table name and the table column doesn't mind about the filter which is applied and you know, hidden rows. In the contrary, so the subtotal function, that's the main advantage of that function. The subtotal function considers only visible rows and ignores hidden rows. So those rows that are hidden, and we can see that they are hidden because there is a gap between the row 26 and 52. So we have actually about 25 rows that are being hidden somewhere. Okay. So that subtotal function is dynamic and displays only the result of the aggregation that we are performing on the visible rows. Okay. So that's why, okay, I'm being careful when you want to reference the totals row in your formulas, because it will display only what is visible. So if you have applied a filter, you might not have the right information. If what you were expecting was the total amount of everything that has been sold across all categories and years and products, then you would certainly use the sum function and not referencing the totals row. So that's being careful here. And we can apply several filters on our table. So we have for the year 2015, and we want to see for the bikes, we can apply multiple filters, and our subtotal, our totals row containing the subtotal function will display only the result for what has been filtered. Okay. All right, let's remove those filters. We can click on the filter icon and clear filter from category, and do the same for the year. Now we have cleared all filters. We can see that when a filter is applied, the icon of the column header changes, giving us a visual clue of the columns that contain a filter. So we can just remove it from here. And eventually, if we want to remove all filters that have been applied to our table, we can also use, we can remove a filter from here, but if you want to remove all filters, we can come on the Home tab, use Sort and Filter, and eventually Clear as well. Let's apply a filter here and here, and then we go here and clear. And when we click on clear, we have seen that it removes all the filters that have been applied. We had two filters, all two filters. Wherever I was in my table, it will clear all filter at once. So it's quite a practical way of removing your filters if you have a very wide table and you might not remember where did you apply certain filters, so easily remove all filters from here. Great, so you are not just limited to the set of functions that are available inside here, but you can also include more functions. So any Excel function that's available, you can add it in there, and we could have also in addition to the total sum, the average rating, we could have a count that gives us, okay, the total product sold 50 for a total of 360,000 whatever currency that we have. All right, so great. So we have created some small analysis of our data set. Let's create a pivot table as well, and we are going to create it here. So different ways of creating our table. We can either start from anywhere within our Excel table, go into the Insert tab, and from the Insert tab, choose Pivot Table, and Excel will open the Create Pivot Table dialog box, asking you to confirm the range that we want to analyze, and in that case, it references the table name, which is very practical once again, because we know that we are referencing the right dataset, and we can choose where to create it, either in a new worksheet or eventually within the existing worksheet. For us, we are going to create it here, so we are going to create it within the existing worksheet. But I want to show you another way of creating it as well. We could start from outside of our table. We want to have it here. So we could start from the destination of our pivot table. Again, click on Pivot Table. And now, because we are outside of the range that we want to analyze, Excel will ask, will ask us to do the work and really reference it. But again, because we gave our table a meaningful name, we can just type it as well. So sales data table. And if I am not mistaken, okay, Excel is case insensitive, so it doesn't matter if you typed with capital D or lowercase, it doesn't matter so much. But be sure to spell it exactly the same way that you named it. So now, existing worksheet, the name of our worksheet, and the reference of that cell in particular. We type it here, and it has worked. So it's not case sensitive, again, the naming of our table, but let's make sure that you have the right name. Now we have access to different columns of our table. So the year column, category, product, sales, and rating. We can click and drag them inside the different areas of our pivot table. So the main purpose of this presentation was to focus mainly on the table structure and how to better organize the data and separate the storage of the data from the analysis and the summarization. So I will not spend much more time on the pivot table. That could be the opportunity for another video, a bit more in depth on pivot table. But we have the different fields available for our pivot table and the different areas on which we can drag our fields and do the required analysis. So definitely we want to analyze the sales, so we can click the sales and drag it inside the values area. Our pivot table is going to create automatically and reflect the information of the summarization of our field. So we have the same amount, 360, 400. So you can see that here, in that case, we don't even need to create any formula. We have just clicked our field, dragged it to the values area of our pivot table. Very easy, very simple. No need to know any formula. It's all done under the hood by Excel. So now we want to organize also to analyze our data by category. So we can click the category field and drag it inside the row. So we'll have a summarized analysis of our dataset by category. So we need to enlarge that a little bit to have our value correctly displayed. And let's format already our values field. So we can click on the small arrow beside. Choose value field settings. We confirm that the type of operation we want to perform is the sum. It could be a good practice to rename that field, that pivot table field, with let's say again here total sales. So total sales. All right, and then we can go here to format it as well. We are going to choose currency, or just we could choose number with 1000 separator. We don't want to display the currency as it would take too much space inside. Would have to widen the column a bit too much. Okay, so now we have our sales amount properly formatted with the right name. Now let's do also further. We can also use the year field to summarize our data by category in the rows and year in the columns, such that we can see how much we have spent in 2015, but also what's the split by category in that year and in the following year as well, and what's the overall grand total for each category. And in the row, the total row at the bottom of our pivot table will have the sales per year, and we can easily see, okay, the increase or eventually decrease and how our sales have performed over years, and compare by category as well. So again, the main focus of this session is not especially on pivot table, so I will not extend so much of all the capabilities of the pivot table, but mainly tables. And now that we have created our summarized information, we have some value, we have new data that are waiting for us, because we have 2015 and 2016, but in the overall data set that we have, we also have 2017. So now what happened? You have created your little report, your summarized information of your data. And as I have said before, you don't want to repeat those tasks, but rather improve your productivity and performance by minimizing the number of times that you are going to create those reports. Okay, so let's include our new data inside. We are going to select that range, right click, copy, go to a new cell, we go down here, and well, I'm going to paste it, only the values in that area, and what we want mainly is this one. Okay, we want to bring it down here and include it inside. Whoops, bingo. You have seen, quite interesting. Okay, so when we have the total row enabled in our table and we include new data inside, let's go back. When we include data, we can insert it just below our table. So because we have the total row enabled in our table, Excel is not going to integrate it so easily as we have seen in the previous video. In that case, we will need to expand our table manually, and Excel is quite intelligent because it knows there is a total row which has been enabled, so it's going to move the total row below the table and integrate the new data that we have selected or pasted inside just before the total row, and not mess up the data. The total row is really a specific row different from the rest of the data range of our table. Okay, it behaves really differently from the rest. That's what we can see. So we have integrated here the accessories. Okay, again, Control Enter to quickly enter all the different all the same value inside all our selected cells. Let's do the same for bikes. We don't copy the headers again. I click on that, I bring it just below, I expand my table, and Excel automatically includes the new data just below, just before our total row. Sorry. Okay, so F2 to enter in edit mode, Control Enter, and again now clothing. We bring it inside here. Okay, expand our table, and now it is clothing, so clothing. All right, and lastly that one. Okay, Opla, we have everything. Now this one is what? This one is clothing. No, this one is components. Okay, I got confused. Okay, components. All right, and now we have this for 2017. We select all our cells, 2017, Control Enter, and now we have our table which is completed with all the years and all the different categories that we have sold over time. We have integrated our new data. Now what happens with our summarized information? Here we can see it has increased, it has changed, all those values have changed. What happened to our pivot table? Nothing has changed inside here, but we'll get back in a minute to that, because that also is going to be dynamic. So let's focus a little bit on the formulas that we have created, and how does that work? So inside those formulas, we have referenced a table range, a table name with a column name, and it expands automatically because the name is not restricted to cell references. Those cells references under the hood are dynamic. Each time the table increases, it expands, and the referred range of that table expands automatically as well. So it's way much more practical than using cell references like G2 to G100, because you never know, I mean, how long will it be? So you could select more cells than what you really need, and you could potentially slow down your formulas and calculation. And if you have quite a long spreadsheet with a lot of data and different formulas, you are going to slow down a lot your different calculation and integrate useless in cells that are not necessary. So referencing a table name is way much better and efficient than using cell references. So that's why all those formulas that reference a table and table columns are updated automatically, and we don't need to do anything with that. Okay, I have opened the help. I didn't want any help, so I want to close it. Excel doesn't want. All right, so those formulas have been updated. Again, this one references the subtotals row, so the totals row at the bottom. Okay, so, and if I remove our totals row, here it will not work. Okay, so it only works when the tables row is displayed. If it is not displayed physically, it will not work. Okay, so let's be careful with that function also. Again, right click on our table, anywhere table, then totals row, and Excel kept in memory what type of evaluation we wanted to perform in the different columns. So it's quite smart, and it has reactivated that function. All right, so pivot table. What happens with our pivot table? We have integrated new data, but we don't see the year 2017. What happens? So very, very simple and very quick. We don't need to reconstruct anything. This pivot table is going to help us save a lot of time also. What we need to do is just right click and choose refresh, which is here, refresh. Right click, refresh. Or eventually from within our pivot table, and here again, we have specific tabs that are specific to pivot tables that are available. When I am outside of my pivot table, those pivot table specific tabs are not appearing, and pivot table shouldn't be confused with Power Pivot, which is a bit different. So from within our pivot table, we can go into pivot table design and choose the refresh here button from the data group, or eventually I think it's possible from the data tab as well, refresh. So 3 different ways, okay, to refresh our table. I think the fastest and easiest for me is to use the right click inside the table, open the contextual menu specific to the pivot table, and choose or click refresh. And now, boom, we have a year 2017, which is displayed. So no need to reconstruct our table. We have our summarized information available here, and we know what we have sold for each year and for each category of each year, and we have our information. So you can see that once you have structured your table, created the report that you need, and we could go further, also create a pivot table, a pivot chart based on that pivot table, different type of charts that we want to have, referencing always as much as possible table names and column names, such that it becomes dynamic, okay? So we don't need to recreate anything in that case. We just have everything available. And if you want to filter, we can also filter our pivot table and only compare 2015 to 2017. So I remove 2016, click OK, and our pivot table adjusts automatically as well. So that's quite smart to work with Excel table and summarize information separately with pivot table or referencing table name and table columns names. Right, okay, well, that's it for this second session. I think we have done quite a lot with our table. We have seen how to create a table. Well, first of all, how a table works, what's a table, and more specifically, what's a table within Excel, how to create an Excel table, activate specific powerful feature of that table, and access the data from that table in the formulas, apply filter, activate the total row at the bottom, and create a powerful pivot table as well to summarize the information of our table. And we have seen finally that when we integrate new data in our table, it's going to update the pivot table and the function that references that table as well. So very, very powerful using Excel table. Right, thank you very much for watching. That's it for this session. I hope that you enjoyed, and looking forward to hearing from you in the comments below, or what you would like to watch the next time. And otherwise, enjoy and see you next time. Bye bye.